Evil Dead 2 wasn't just a sequel, it was resurrection by madness, stitched from failure, friendship, and gallons of blood. But behind the screaming and the slapstick, it was survival with a camera held together by tape and terror. The bloodbath that broke the ratings board, too wild for the MPAA to name. Freddy's glove waiting in the basement, one nightmare winking at another, and Raimi's DIY revolution, fueled by bruises, chaos, and the thrill of no rules. These are 20 weird facts about Evil Dead 2, and buried in the chainsaws and the carnage, it was the sequel that died twice and refused to stay dead. Number 1. Before Evil Dead 2 rose from the grave, it was buried twice. Sam Raimi first pitched the sequel right after the original's cult success in 1981. His idea was bold. Ash would be thrown back in time to battle medieval demons, the blueprint for what would later become Army of Darkness. But no one wanted it. Studios called it too weird, too risky, too expensive. The project withered before it even drew breath. Years later, Raimi tried again, this time after Crime Wave flopped. The failure shattered his momentum, scared off investors, and left the sequel's script collecting dust in a drawer. His dream sequel had become a ghost, haunting his career with what-ifs. By 1985, Evil Dead 2 was all but dead. No studio, no money, no future. Just a filmmaker staring at the ashes of the movie he'd built his life around. But sometimes, when a dream refuses to die, something, or someone, answers the call from the dark. Number 2. After Crime Wave crashed and burned, Sam Raimi's career flatlined. No one wanted another horror film from The Cabin Guy, but one powerful fan refused to let Evil Dead 2 stay buried: Stephen King. King had called the first film the most ferociously original horror movie of the year, and when he heard Raimi couldn't find financing, he took action. While directing Maximum Overdrive for producer Dino De Laurentiis, King personally phoned him and said, "You need to make this movie." That single call resurrected the dead. Within days, Raimi had a $3.6 million budget and his sequel back from the grave. Evil Dead 2 wasn't saved by a spell, it was saved by a king. And for Raimi, that call was more than a favor. It was the moment horror's reigning master passed his crown to the next generation. Number 3. When Evil Dead 2 opens, it feels like deja vu. Same cabin, same Necronomicon, same screaming woman. For years, fans argued it was a remake, but the truth was far stranger. Raimi wasn't repeating himself. He was escaping a legal nightmare. The original Evil Dead's rights were tied up with different distributors, which meant Raimi couldn't use a single frame from the first film to recap the story. So instead, he reshot the opening from scratch, rewriting Ash's past with fewer characters and faster chaos. It wasn't a creative choice, it was survival. What began as a legal workaround became one of the strangest sequels in film history, a continuation disguised as repetition. Raimi turned red tape into rhythm, using memory and madness to blur the line between old and new. Evil Dead 2 didn't remake the original, it reinvented it. Proof that even lawyers couldn't kill a good nightmare twice. Number 4. When Sam Raimi finished Evil Dead 2, he didn't deliver a horror movie. He delivered an explosion. Walls bled, limbs flew, and blood didn't drip. It gushed, pouring like a waterfall from the screen. It was a cartoon of carnage, a slapstick apocalypse. But when the MPAA saw it, they didn't laugh. They panicked. The film was instantly slapped with an X rating, a label reserved for pornography, not chainsaws. If Raimi accepted it, theaters wouldn't play it. If he cut it, he'd lose the madness that made it special. The studio, led by Dino De Laurentiis, faced a nightmare. But instead of trimming a single drop, they pulled a stunt worthy of Ash himself. De Laurentiis secretly created a fake company, Rosebud Releasing Corporation, run by one of his own employees. On paper, it wasn't part of his studio, so it could release Evil Dead 2 unrated, sidestepping the MPAA entirely. The ruse worked. The movie hit theaters raw and uncut, drenched in red syrup and chaos exactly as Raimi intended. It was a small rebellion, a middle finger to censorship and corporate fear, and it changed the rules for independent horror. Raimi didn't just get his blood back. He proved that sometimes the only way to survive Hollywood is to fake your own company and bleed freely. Number 5. Forget Hollywood backlots. Evil Dead 2 was filmed inside an abandoned junior high school in Wadesboro, North Carolina. Sam Raimi refused to shoot at Dino De Laurentiis' fancy studio, afraid the producer would hover over every frame. So the crew rented J.R. Faison Junior High for just $500 a month and turned its echoing hallways into hell. Inside the gym, they built the entire cabin, the cellar, the shed, every creaking door and blood-stained wall. Raimi's team lived in that building for weeks, surrounded by fake blood, screaming props, and the smell of damp wood. Students once played basketball there. Now it echoed with chainsaws. By the time filming wrapped, the floors were permanently stained. The Evil Dead didn't rise in Hollywood. It rose in a haunted school, one that never quite went quiet again. Number 6. Sam Raimi never spared his actors, especially his brother. Ted Raimi played the shrieking corpse Henrietta, buried under a 40-pound latex suit in sweltering North Carolina heat. Every day, he'd stumble stumble around half-blind, drenched in sweat, gasping for air through a straw-sized vent in the mask. At one point, liquid starts dripping from Henrietta's ear. Not special effects, just Ted's real sweat leaking out on camera. The crew didn't stop rolling. Raimi laughed, yelled, "Perfect, keep it," and moved on. Ted nearly passed out, but the scene stayed. The audience saw horror. The crew saw heat stroke. And that's how one man's misery became movie magic, and one of horror's most disgusting legends. Number 7. Deep in Evil Dead 2's cellar, something gleams in the dark. Blades on fingers, a nightmare you might recognize. It's Freddy Krueger's glove. Makeup artist Mark Shostrom was working double duty, sculpting deadites for Raimi while helping build nightmares for A Nightmare on Elm Street 3: Dream Warriors. One night, he borrowed Freddy's glove and hung it in the cabin cellar as a hidden tribute. Raimi loved it. Years earlier, Wes Craven had shown the Evil Dead playing on a TV inside Nightmare on Elm Street. This was Raimi's bloody handshake back. 2 directors, 2 worlds, 1 running joke carved in steel. For horror fans, that glove wasn't just a prop. It was a secret alliance between monsters. Freddy moved into the woods, and the dead welcomed him home. Number 8. Mid-battle, drenched in blood, Bruce Campbell suddenly blurts out one bizarre dubbed line, "Workshed."
Workshed.
It's quick, awkward, and completely unforgettable. Raimi added it in post so the audience would know where Ash was heading next, but the rushed audio stuck out like a chainsaw in a library. Fans loved it anyway. It became an inside joke on set, and years later, when Campbell walked onto Escape from LA, Kurt Russell looked at him, grinned, and said, "Say it." Campbell did. Just one word. Workshed. The crew burst out laughing. What started as a throwaway sound fix turned into one of horror's strangest catchphrases. Proof that sometimes the weirdest mistakes outlive the movie itself. Number 9. No actor has suffered more gloriously than Bruce Campbell, but Evil Dead 2 nearly broke him. For the infamous blood geyser scene, Raimi wanted excess. Campbell got apocalypse. A 55-gallon drum of fake blood, dyed syrup, milk, and food coloring dumped straight onto his face. Flat on his back, eyes burning, he heard Raimi yell, "If you're drowning, wave your arms." Campbell shouted back, "That's what I do anyway." Seconds later, the red wave hit, thick, sticky, and relentless. He called it like being waterboarded by Satan. Raimi called it comedy. Campbell called it survival. Between the pain and the chaos, one thing was certain. The man didn't just play a hero, he earned it. Number 10. At the film's climax, Ash faces a towering demon nicknamed Rotten Applehead. The prop was massive, built from latex, foam, and nightmare fuel. So huge that when filming wrapped, the crew simply abandoned it in the woods of North Carolina. Too heavy to move, too cursed to destroy. For years, fans searched for it like relic hunters chasing a myth. Then one day, someone found it, decaying in a haunted house attraction, still terrifying visitors who had no idea they were staring at a piece of horror history. The monster had found a second life, scaring new victims decades later. Evil Dead 2's demon never died. It just got a new job. Number 11. When Sam Raimi brought in Scott Spiegel to co-write Evil Dead 2, he didn't just get a writer, he got a lunatic genius. Spiegel had already made a short film called Attack of the Helping Hand, where the hamburger helper mascot turns homicidal, strangling housewives in their kitchens. Raimi saw it and laughed so hard he nearly choked. That brand of chaos was exactly what Evil Dead 2 needed. Spiegel's humor infected the script, the flying eyeball, the possessed hand, the screaming furniture, all born from that same kitchen sink madness. Raimi called it Looney Tunes meets Lovecraft. It wasn't horror that scared you straight. It was horror that made you dizzy, confused, and laughing through the blood. And it all started with a killer oven mitt. Number 12. Not every actor in Evil Dead 2 kept battling demons. Some started selling vacuum cleaners. Richard Domeyer, who played Professor Ed Getley, Annie's doomed research partner turned deadite, walked straight from Raimi's blood-soaked set into the bright lights of QVC. He became one of the network's longest-running hosts, cheerfully pitching jewelry, gadgets, and home goods instead of screaming in fake blood. Domeyer even joked that live TV was scarier than the cabin. From chainsaws to sales pitches, his career became a bizarre mirror of the film, proof that you can leave the Necronomicon behind, but you'll never quite escape the audience. Number 13. After filming wrapped, the Evil Dead 2 cabin was left to rot in the North Carolina woods, walls caving, the shed collapsing, the forest quietly reclaiming it. For decades, it was just a rumor whispered on fan forums. Then one man refused to let it die. A superfan named Mike tracked down the property in 2014, hiked through the mud, and found what was left: the chimney, the beams, even pieces of the workshed door. He got permission to salvage it all and began taking the relics on tour under evildeadworkshed.com. Fans can now stand inches from the wood that once dripped with fake blood. The cabin may be gone, but its ghost still travels. devils, carried by the hands of the faithful who refused to let the dead stay buried. Number 14. In Germany, Evil Dead 2 didn't crawl out of the grave. It hit the dance floor. The title was changed to Tanz der Teufel 2, literally Dance of the Devils, because distributors thought Evil Dead sounded too harsh for posters. Ironically, there isn't a single dance scene, unless you count Linda's spinning headless ballet in the woods. But the name stuck. Even today, German fans still call the series Tanz der Teufel. The poster was recolored too. The skull turned neon blue, its eyes glowing brighter than before. Somewhere between translation and imagination, Raimi's cabin in the woods became a disco for demons, and horror somehow got a little groove. Number 15. Dan Hicks wasn't supposed to be a movie star. He was just a friend of Raimi's from Michigan who came down to North Carolina to play Jake, the rough-edged redneck who drags Ash through hell and back. But his performance won everyone over. Raimi kept bringing him back, from Darkman to Spider-Man 2, always as some loud, lovable troublemaker. Hicks became part of Raimi's unofficial film family, appearing in reunion projects with Bruce Campbell and Scott Spiegel for decades. Behind the shotgun and the yelling, he was pure heart. When Hicks passed away in 2020, fans didn't just lose a character actor, they lost one of the Deadite clan's most loyal souls. Number 16. Before Holly Hunter won her Oscar for The Piano, she was nearly swinging chainsaws in the woods. In the early 80s, she shared a house with Sam Raimi, Scott Spiegel, and the Coen brothers. Her wit, energy, and thick southern drawl inspired Raimi so much that he wrote the character of Bobby Joe, the feisty doomed hitchhiker, with her in mind. When Evil Dead 2 finally went into production, Hunter was already booked for Raising Arizona. Raimi cast actress Cassie Wesley in her place, but kept Hunter's spirit alive in every line. You can still hear her voice in Bobby Joe's wild screaming and fierce stubbornness. In another timeline, the woman who conquered Khan could have been eaten by trees, and loved every minute of it. Number 17. When Evil Dead 2 hit theaters, critics didn't just laugh, they applauded. Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars, calling it a sophisticated satire, while Empire declared Raimi and Campbell gods of slapstick horror. Playboy magazine even ranked it among the greatest sequels ever made, right next to The Godfather Part 2 and The Empire Strikes Back. It wasn't just a splatter movie anymore. Raimi's insanity, the spinning cameras, the manic editing, the screaming trees, had become art. Evil Dead 2 proved that horror could be smart, self-aware, and still completely unhinged. The cabin wasn't just haunted, it had become sacred ground. Number 18. For a movie that almost didn't get made, Evil Dead 2 refused to stay buried. It opened quietly in 310 theaters, earning just over $800,000 its first weekend. Then word of mouth exploded. Fans dragged their friends to see it, sometimes twice, just to watch their reactions. Within weeks, it climbed to $11 million worldwide, a tenfold return on Raimi's $3.6 million budget. It was the little sequel that couldn't be killed. Critics had called it too weird. Studios had called it too risky, but audiences knew better. They turned a cabin full of fake blood into a cult cathedral, and a struggling director into a legend who could make horror fun again. Number 19. After Evil Dead 2 became a cult sensation, Italy decided not to wait for a real sequel. They just made their own. In 1988, Ghost House was released as La Casa 3, rebranded as the official continuation of Raimi's series. Then came Witchery with David Hasselhoff, renamed La Casa 4, followed by Beyond Darkness, La Casa 5. None featured Ash. None involved Raimi. It was cinematic identity theft at its most absurd. Foreign filmmakers hijacking the brand to sell knockoffs under the same cursed name. But Raimi never fought it. He didn't have to. The real Evil Dead had already transcended copyright. The imposters came and went, but the Necronomicon, it never needed subtitles. Number 20. Sam Raimi didn't just direct Evil Dead 2. He reinvented how low-budget horror could move. Every camera trick, every illusion of chaos was built from scraps and imagination. He turned power tools into steadicams, fishing wire into flying demons, and reverse motion into the illusion of possession. The entire film was stitched together like mad science, equal parts ingenuity and insanity. The results looked bigger than the budget, faster than the crew, and stranger than Hollywood had ever allowed. Raimi's style, the whip pans, the crash zooms, the shrieking energy, would echo through decades of filmmaking, inspiring directors from Peter Jackson to Robert Rodriguez. Evil Dead 2 wasn't just a sequel, it was a cinematic blueprint, showing the world that creativity could be louder than money, and that a camera, a cabin, and courage were all you really needed to change horror forever. Bonus fact: even in a cabin overflowing with blood, chainsaws, and screaming demons, Sam Raimi found room for mischief. During filming, a small rat scurried across the basement floor, not a prop, but a real intruder. Instead of shooing it away, the exhausted crew gave it a name, Señor Cojones, Spanish for Mr. Testicles. The name stuck. Between takes, they'd feed him crumbs and joke that he was the true survivor of the Evil Dead. In the middle of of all that fake death and madness, Señor Cojones became the film's unofficial mascot, a filthy little reminder that even in a world of horror, laughter always finds a way to crawl back. Evil Dead 2 wasn't supposed to exist. It was too weird for studios, too gory for censors, too reckless for logic. But Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell made it anyway, with duct tape, blood syrup, and an ironclad sense of humor. What began as a sequel no one wanted became the cornerstone of horror's golden age. Decades later, fans still quote every scream, every splat, every impossible camera spin. Because beneath all the chaos and carnage, Evil Dead 2 captured something rare, the sheer joy of creation itself. If this one still makes you grin through the gore, drop a comment. Tell us what twisted classic we should dig up next, because this is what happens when filmmakers stop asking for permission and start raising the dead.